Hello, it's me, Cyene, and today we're going to talk about and read a story about a friend of Archimedes. You remember him, the person who shouted, "Eureka!" don't you? Archimedes had a friend. His name was Eratosthenes. He is the one who measured the Earth 2,500 years ago. You must think, whatever, it must have been easy. No, it wasn't easy. All the tools he had was a stick and his brain. So, this is how he looked like. The librarian who measured the whole Earth 2,500 years ago. Let's start reading, shall we? More than 2,000 years ago, a very, very smart baby was born. His name was Eratosthenes. We already know that, don't we? But now Eratosthenes is a baby. He lived in a city in the coast of Africa that is now called Libya. And even as a baby, he was very curious. He would crawl across the floor and wonder where those ants went. When he could speak, he began asking billions and even millions of questions. Where did the sun come from? Where does the wind come from? How big is the sun? How big is the earth? Is there water all around the earth? How far away is the sun? When he was 6 years old, he went to school. It was called gymnasium. At the gymnasium, there were no desks, paper, or even pencils. In the gymnasium, things were a bit harder than it seems. Eratosthenes loved the gymnasium. It was a chance of asking questions. Eratosthenes was a whiz at math. When Eratosthenes had learned all he could, like many other Greek boys, he was sent to the famous Greek capital city to learn more. He said goodbye to his parents and teachers and sailed to Athens. In addition to being a great questioner, he made all types of lists. He also wrote books. Eratosthenes' name started to get around. When he was 30 years old, a king called Ptolemy III, the ruler of Egypt, asked him to serve as a tutor for his son, Philopator, in Alexandria. He was very excited for a scholar like himself. Exciting, serving a king. And the best thing about Alexandria was it has that world-famous library. You got to know about it. And there was also a museum. It was great. There were laboratories and libraries and dining halls and private studios. Eratosthenes was very excited. Eratosthenes became the head of the library. How cool is that? It's exciting to be the head of a world-famous library, isn't it? As a chief librarian, Eratosthenes was busy helping other scholars find information. He had to keep in good graces with the king because the king is a bit fierce. But Eratosthenes' main interest was not writing, poetry, or anything like that. It was geography. Once upon a time, it had been thought that the earth was flat. Then, for a while, people thought it was the shape of a cylinder. But when Eratosthenes was born, they were sure it was a circle. He had all types of questions about the earth. How much does it tilt? But the most of all one was, how big is the earth? Now, then there were no ships, and nobody dared to sail as far as the ocean. So Eratosthenes began to find bits and pieces of all of this, of the things that will measure the earth in all types of scrolls. He knew what he must do. He had to write the first complete geography book. It would take Eratosthenes many years. Okay, so this is going to be long. Nobody ever in the history from Eratosthenes had ever thought of measuring the earth. Only Eratosthenes had thought of it. Perhaps he thought of it as a grapefruit. There are sections. In order to measure the grapefruit, you count each section. And if one section is 1 inch, how many sections are there? Perhaps 8. 8 times 1, 8. 8 sections and 8 measured. But how could Eratosthenes find out how many sections were needed? He knew that every circle, whether it is as small as a grapefruit or as big as the Earth, is made out of 360 degrees. What does that mean? I'll explain it in a second. This is Minnie riding on a horse. Now she's at 0 degrees, but if she turns this way a bit, now she's at 90 degrees. And if she turns this way, she's at 180 degrees. And then if she turns this way, she's at 270 degrees. Then she turns this way. She's back where she started. That's 360 degrees. Now, every circle has 360 degrees. Minnie went on a circle, and so she made 360 degrees. So this is Minnie and her horse again. This isn't very confusing. So now this is 0 degrees. If you go like this, you're at about 30 degrees. Now 45, now 60, now 90. Now I'm at 120. Now I'm on 130, 315, 330, and 360. We have made a whole circle, 360 degrees. Now let me show you the real parts of a circle. So this is 1/2 of a circle. So this is 0, 90, and 180. And so this has got to be 182. So if I put it here, 180 plus 180 equals 360. So it's kind of like 180 is 1/2 of 360. I've made a complete circle. So this is 120. Now if I add another one, it's 120. And 120 plus 120 is 240. And 240 plus another 120 equals 360. And I have made it again to 360, a complete circle. We formed 360 again because 4 times 90 equals 360. Eratosthenes had heard a stick in Cyrene, his home country, would cast no shadow on the summer solstice. He wondered if this was true in Alexandria. And on the summer solstice, he waited for a shadow to appear or not appear. But there was a shadow, it turned out. He wondered why. So he understood that the Earth was round. That's why one stick cast no shadow and the other did. The sunlight was going down to Cyrene more than in Alexandria. So in Alexandria, there were shadows. Now, using the shadow of the stick in Alexandria, he saw the shadow of it and he found out the angle between the two cities, Cyene and Alexandria. Isn't that cool? And so he found out that the angle was about 7.2 degrees. And also, he divided 360 by 7.2, and now he knew it would take 50 Alexandria to Cyrene sections to make out the circumference of the Earth. So for Eratosthenes, it was exactly like this. How many of these will make the whole entire circle? Let's use some quick math to find out. Okay, so this is 30 degrees. How many 30s do you think are in 360? 12. Are we right? Yes, we are. Once you measure this distance, all you do is multiply it by 12 to find out how big this circle is. He needed to know how big the space of the top of one of the pieces was. So you know what he did? He made some soldiers walk from Alexandria to Cyrene. Now they walked like this in a pattern, so they wouldn't run, and if they did run or go in different paces or faster, then it would be hard to measure. But they just walked the same way. So he measured how many feet it was from Alexandria to Cyrene. After he did that, he found the circumference of the whole Earth. just by using a stick, a shadow, and his mind. How much is the actual circumference? Aren't you curious to know? Well, you're a good starter, Eratosthenes. And so, the circumference of the Earth is 24,662 miles. That's a lot. And now, with all our handy tools like satellites, Eratosthenes was very accurate and very close to what we have. And that is the story of the man who measured the Earth. I hope you enjoyed this video, and from it we learned that even if nobody dares to do something, you could step up and try it. And you don't need to complicate it, like walking around the Earth holding a yardstick, do you? No, you don't. You can just use something simple, like Eratosthenes. He only used a stick and his mind. Bye! See you next time!